What's going on, everyone? This is Kerry Wood, aka Mr. Sports and Swag. More than welcome you in. It's been a minute, man. It has been a while since I've joined you here on this podcast, here on Spreaker.com, but I am back. And the Sports and Swag Report is definitely back. Actually, the last time that I joined you, it was kind of just Sports and Swag, but now it is the Sports and Swag Report. We have a new website. It is sportsandswagreport.com. It kind of replaces sportsandswag.com, so really want you to come by and check it out. Kind of change the look up a little bit. Color schemes change a little, but the content is going to remain the same. But we're going to definitely push these podcasts a little bit more as we get into football season. We're going to start this one off talking a little college football, and it's going to be about the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, that is. And I have a preview that is ready to go, but we're going to add this podcast to it. You'll find that again on sportsandswagreport.com. Anyway, let's talk about it. And we are very close to kicking this thing off college football wise. The NFL, the preseason is in full swing. We've had 2 games, for everyone except, of course, the Cowboys, and they had their 3rd game over the weekend because they played in the Hall of Fame game. But other than that, everything's starting to get in full swing, and it is an exciting time of year, especially if you live around in the southeastern part of the U.S. like I do here in Birmingham. The SEC is live. Alabama Crimson Tide, you know what it is. Did not win the national championship last year, but it doesn't matter. The football is king supreme around here. So, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the ACC and that team that actually beat Alabama in the national title game last year, the Clemson Tigers. We can talk about Clemson to kind of start this thing off. And again, basically what I want to do with this podcast is just add a little bit to what I said, what I wrote in the article that hopefully that you're going to read. And, just kind of expound on a few things that I said in there, maybe bring up a few other things that maybe I did not allude to in the article. So I thought maybe this would be a good way to just kind of hit it hard a couple ways and, kind of hit it from every angle. So Clemson, let's talk about the Tigers. They come up, the defending national champs. The AP poll just came out the other day. They're ranked number 5 in the country. A little bit of a debate going on whether that's too high for them. Losing Deshaun Watson, losing really the other 3 really big weapons on offense that they had. Wayne Gallman, the running back, Mike Williams, the big tall receiver, number 7, that was just catch just about anything that was thrown his way. And, of course, Jordan Leggett, the tight end. Those pretty much were their top 4 skill players. All of them are in the NFL playing on Sundays. And then, of course, they had a couple losses on defense as well. But Clemson's going to be strong defensively. I don't think you're going to have to worry about them if you're a Clemson fan. That front line is something to behold. They are absolutely awesome. And they're led by a sophomore, Dexter Lawrence, big number 9 in the middle of that front 7. Man, he is a load. He is an absolute load. He really got after the quarterback in that Florida State game. They played that game back on ESPN the other day, and I like seeing those games in the off season because it's kind of, you can kind of reminisce a little bit and kind of get back in tune with what happened last season. And man, he just ripped Florida State's offensive line to shreds. And he had a very good game also against Alabama's offensive line and really disrupted Alabama's running game, especially when Bo Scarborough went out of that ball game. So I think what Clemson's going to try to do, they're going to kind of lean on that defense a little bit. They're going to lean on that defense while Kelly Bryant, who's a junior, he's going to be the starting quarterback. while he kind of gets acclimated to everything, I think that defense is going to really be looked upon to really kind of carry things. And they're going to have to do that pretty quickly because, game one, Kent State next week, that shouldn't be any problem. But, man, September 9th, week 2, the Auburn Tigers come to town with Jarrett Stidham. And I don't know if you have heard about Jarrett Stidham. Trust me, I've heard a lot about the brother in these parts, man. It is... Auburn fans are going crazy. The hype is real around here. We're going to find out, man. We're going to find out. Jarrett Stidham, of course, is the transfer out of Baylor. He's going to be the Auburn starting quarterback, as Gus Malzahn announced last week. Should be interesting, to say the least. Should be very interesting to see how they come out and handle that game up at Clemson. Now, a lot of people expecting a lot of things out of Auburn. A lot of people expecting a lot of things out of Auburn, possibly to even win the SEC and beat out Alabama. So we'll see how that goes. But let's move on talking about the ACC. Clemson, again, ranked number 5 in AP. A lot of people think that's too high. I'm not one of those people. I believe in Dabo Swinney. I believe in what he has built there at Clemson. And that team, that's the wrong phrase. That program, that is a program now. It's not a team. It's not a year-to-year thing. This is a program that is going to be around for a long time, and they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. If you're a Florida State fan, might as well just get used to it. They're not going anywhere. Florida State, they're not going anywhere either. Jimbo Fisher has done a really good job there. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that game on November 11th. That game being played at Clemson this year. Clemson was able to go into Tallahassee and beat the Seminoles last season in that really good game, 37-34, scoring that touchdown late and then just wreaking havoc on DeAndre Francois and company on that final drive, where I think they ended up with like a 4th down and 32 after Francois was sacked a couple of times by that Clemson defense. And Florida State had gotten in the field goal range, and then the offensive line just just fell apart. They had a couple of penalties, gave up a couple of sacks. Then next thing you know, it's 1st down and 10 at around the 30. Turned out to be 4th and 32 back inside Florida State territory. So that was game over, and it was game over for any chance for Florida State to get back into the national title into the national championship game or college football playoff hopes at that point as well. So we're going to talk about Florida State a little bit more here. I want to get into a couple teams that are not the favorite to win. Florida State is everyone's favorite to win this league. There's no surprise in that with all they have coming back. But I think you have to look at some of these teams that could kind of maybe throw a monkey wrench in this thing. Pittsburgh almost did that with their win at Clemson last year. We thought once Pittsburgh won that game against Clemson at Clemson, which was the only game Clemson ended up losing last season, we thought the Tigers were dead. But they were able to get back into it. And, of course, the rest is history. I think Pittsburgh has a chance to be a really good team again. I mean, I don't think they're going to win the Coastal Division. I don't think they're going to do that. But I think they can challenge. I think that the Coastal, when you look at Miami, you look at Virginia Tech, you look at North Carolina, you look at Georgia Tech, maybe possibly having a little bit to say about it. That is going to be one division that's going to be up for grabs. I think in the end, though, it's going to come down to Miami and Virginia Tech. That November 4th game in Blacksburg, to me, is going to be for the Coastal Division title. Should be interesting. And Virginia Tech is, they return, 7 on defense, but they only return 5 starters on offense. Justin Fuente doing what he does with an offense just like he did at Memphis. He had that thing rocking and rolling. I don't know if he's going to be able to get that kind of production this season, but again, but he's done it so many times, so you really can't say never with Fuente running an offense. But the one thing that they're going to do, I think they're going to be able to defend well. And I think that's going to have Virginia Tech right there with Miami. If you read my article, I have the Miami Hurricanes as my surprise team in the ACC. And I know that sounds kind of funny. That sounds kind of strange when you're talking about the U. You're talking about the Miami Hurricanes, the almighty Miami Hurricanes, with all their history, with all of their tradition, a surprise team. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but when you look at where they've come from the last several years, you look at 7-5 in 2012. 9-4, which is a pretty decent season in 2013, but then they go back to 6-7 in 2014, 8-5 in 2015, and again 9-4 last season. It's just been up and down. There's been no consistency, no stability. I think they're going to get that with Mark Richt. The only thing about it is you might want to ask a Georgia fan if that. If that stability and that consistency is enough without actually winning a title. I'm not going to say that Mark Richt is going to win a title at Miami. I'm not saying that he's not. But what I do think that Mark Richt is going to do is he's going to have that team competing every year for that Coastal Division title. And then sooner or later, they're going to win a game. They're going to beat a Clemson when it counts. They're going to beat a Florida State when it counts. Sooner or later, you watch and see. I don't know if it's going to be this season, but, in terms of being a surprise team, I think it has to be a team that really has a shot to not only, make strides in wins and losses, but also has a shot to maybe win the conference as a whole. I think the next team in line that I would look at as being possibly a real surprise team in this league would be the NC State Wolfpack. North Carolina State has 17 returning starters off a team that went 7-6, including their quarterback, the junior Ryan Finley. They also have a nice wide receiver in Jalen Samuels, number 1. He can go out and catch them with the best of them. They're gonna put some points on the board. They're going to put some points on the board, no question. I think their defense is, it's going to be solid. They're not great. They're going to give up some yards. They're going to give up some points. But I do think them being experienced is going to help them out. So, and then I think the other thing that helps them is you look at their schedule. Well, then again, no, it doesn't. I think really, when it comes down to it, I think NC State really could be that surprise team. Maybe they would step up. Maybe they could beat one of those 3 teams that's in the Atlantic Division with them. Because, see, that's part of the problem. They're in the wrong division. When you look at the Atlantic Division that's stacked with Florida State, Clemson, Louisville, NC State is obviously not going to – they're not going to finish ahead of those 3 teams, I don't think. They may push a Louisville, because I've got Louisville finishing 3rd in that division. I'll talk a little bit more about Louisville here in just a few minutes. I don't see them getting ahead of Clemson. I don't see them getting ahead of Florida State, but I would not be shocked if they beat one of those teams on any given Saturday. I think that's what you have to look at with the Wolfpack. I mean, they're a dangerous team. Whenever you got that kind of experience coming back, I liked their offense last year. I think, Clemson, November 4th, at home, it's a homecoming game. Why you would schedule Clemson as your homecoming game, I don't know, but could be an interesting game. Louisville, they play at home. That could be very interesting. That's a Thursday night game, I would assume, on ESPN. And then you look at, again, at Florida State, it's going to be tough. That's going to be tough for them to pull out, but who knows? We saw North Carolina go into Florida State and do it last year with Mitch Trubisky. So, you never say never. You never say never with a team that has that type of experience coming back. I think you look at Louisville, let's talk about the Cardinals for a little bit. The start that they got out to, man, everybody was about to crown them national champs. Everyone thought that Lamar Jackson was going to lead the Cardinals possibly to the playoff, maybe to the national championship. They were looking like they might even win that game at Clemson back in October of last year, or September, whatever it was. Let it kind of get away at the end. Then they blew out Florida State 63-20, which was just an astounding game. And then somewhere along the line, it just kind of got away from them. They ended up losing 3 straight at the end of the season. The blowout loss to Houston, the loss to Kentucky when they were almost a 4-touchdown favorite over the Wildcats, and then just to get really just embarrassed 29-9 against LSU in the bowl game, which that bowl game was the Citrus Bowl. Just, it is really a head scratcher as to why this team, not only did they lost those games, and really if you look back, Houston was a good football team with Greg Ward at quarterback. Kentucky was not a bad football team either. They ended up going to a bowl out of the SEC. And, of course, LSU was always a pretty good team, even though Les Miles had, was relinquished of his duties and Ed Orgeron had taken over. It's still LSU. So there's nothing really wrong with those 3 losses. But I think the biggest problem was the offensive production. 9 points against LSU. I mean, again, that's a strong defense, but, Clemson had a strong defense. They put up 36 points on them. Florida State put up 63 points on Florida State. So to score 9 points in that bowl game was, I don't know, man. It's a little bit troubling, a little bit concerning to me as they come into this 2017 season. That's something that Bobby Petrino and Lamar Jackson going to have to get straight. Can Lamar Jackson win the Heisman Trophy again? Can he repeat? I don't think he can. I really don't. Even if they're able to kind of iron things out offensively, I just can't see them putting up those kind of numbers again. I just can't. I can't see it. I mean, the dude is unbelievable. The way he can run the football, but his passing has to get a little bit better. He only completed, and I saw that number. I've been going back to my notes here. He only completed 56% of his passes last year, and that's a problem. That is a problem. He should be in the 60s. You're a college football quarterback, especially a Heisman Trophy type quarterback, and I understand that they they ran the ball a lot with him and all of that, and he did end up with 30 touchdowns and on 9 interceptions, which those are good numbers too. But 50's got those 50%, that 56% to me has got to get a little bit higher. And so. I got Louisville finishing 3rd in the Atlantic Division. But I think let's get over to Florida State. They're everyone's favorite to win this thing. They're everyone's favorite to get into the college football playoff. And they're most everyone's favorite to probably get to the national title game. And that's kind of regardless of what happens next Saturday night against Alabama in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. That's kind of regardless of that fact, because I think most people think the loser of that game, as long as they come back and handle their business afterward, they're going to be just fine. And I would have to agree with that sentiment. But this is the thing about Florida State. Well, I do like DeAndre Francois. I am a Francois fan. I think that some of his shortcomings, again, he was a freshman. And I think that offensive line, I think those were his shortcomings last season, why there were some issues of, Florida State's offense kind of not producing the way they should. Dalvin Cook was obviously the leader of that offense, no question about it, but he's gone now. And so Francois is going to have to be the guy to take over. But I don't really worry about that, because I think Francois has all the tools. I think he and Jalen Hurts it's going to be a fantastic matchup of those two quarterbacks next week. But the thing that's going to dictate how far Florida State goes, to me, it's 2 things. I think it's 2 things. 1, the offensive line, and 2, how quick they get off, how the starts they get off to, again, good in big games. We've seen it. First, I'll talk about the offensive line. Like I said, the Clemson game was that Clemson defensive line absolutely won that football game against Florida State. But all they had to do was not get an illegal procedure penalty, or just a simple pick up a blitz from Clemson's linebacking core, and they probably at least tie that football game. And who knows, maybe they win in overtime or whatever. And we saw that not only in the Clemson game, we saw it in a lot of other games during the season. But so again, you would think that they're going to be a little bit more experienced and they're going to be able to improve. But again, I think that's something you have to look out for in some of the big games. You're not going to have to look out for that in most games, on their schedule. But again, next week, Alabama, at Clemson in November, Louisville in October, at Florida at the end of November to end the season, their rivalry game. Those are the times, that offensive line, when you're talking about trying to go, at least 11-1 in a regular season. One breakdown from that unit can turn a team that's 11-1 to a team 10-2 very quickly, and have them on the outside looking in at the college football playoff. Another thing, like I said, is the starts this team gets off to, and that's not just this past season. I think you have to look at it from just several seasons going back with Jimbo Fisher leading the way with this football team. We saw it against Auburn, even when they won the national championship in 2013. That BCS title game, it was called at the time, they got down 21-3 to Auburn. Look back the next season. This is with Jameis Winston as the quarterback. The next season they played, that was the first season of the college football playoff. They played Oregon, and Oregon jumped on them quickly. It's just head scratching how they get off to such slow starts in big football games. We saw it against Louisville at Louisville last season. We saw it even in the first game of the year against Ole Miss out of the SEC. We saw it, Ole Miss team on that Monday night. I remember it well, sitting here looking at it. Ole Miss jumped out to a 24-6 lead. If Hugh Freeze knew how to call a running play and kind of milk the clock a little bit, Florida State doesn't win that football game. I mean, we're talking about a 4-loss Florida State team at that point. They ended up coming back and winning that game over Ole Miss. Again, the Louisville game turned out to be a disaster. I just don't understand the slow starts. I don't. And a lot of times I've seen, on Twitter, chatting back and forth with different people, and they saw all the adjustments that Jimbo Fisher makes, and this that he does, and that he does with the offense. But man, I don't know, man. I'm just again, I think Jimbo Fisher's a really good coach. I don't know that he's a great coach. I haven't seen him prove it. I know he has a national championship under his belt now. He's going to have to prove it to me, man. But again, I felt like, as far as predicting who wins this league and, the order of finish, I felt like I had to kind of go with Florida State. I'm going to have to give them the benefit of the doubt, because we just don't know about Clemson as much as I would like to. I think Clemson's going to be fine. I would not be surprised at all if Clemson represents the ACC in the college football playoff. Would not shock me at all. But it's going to really depend on Kelly Bryant and his maturity. I mean, can he come in, and he doesn't have to be Deshaun Watson, but he is going to have to be close. He's got some big time shoes to fill. He's got a few less weapons, or at least a few less experienced weapons than Watson had. So it's going to be interesting to see how that offense goes. But if that offense comes around, that defense, by the end of the season, this team is going to be hard to beat. If they can at least, maybe they lose the Louisville game, They're on September 16th, but maybe they get the Virginia Tech game on September 30th up in Blacksburg. Those are really the two rockiest spots I see them having, at least inside the conference. Of course, that Auburn game is going to be tough September 9th. But if they can kind of get through that and get through November 4th at NC State, which I think is going to be a tough game, like I said, if they're one loss at that point hosting Florida State, I'm going to like this team's chances. I'm going to like this team's chances to win that game against Florida State and win this league. But if they lose a game, I think it's very possible that they could have a couple of losses before they get to Florida State. So that's kind of the reason I go with Florida State to win the Atlantic. And I think Florida State is going to end up playing the Miami Hurricanes. Again, it would not surprise me at all to see Virginia Tech being the game again as they were last year. It could be a rematch with Clemson possibly. I would not be surprised at that. I think Miami, their schedule really works out for them. They don't, they play Florida State, but they don't play Clemson. They don't play Louisville. Again, Virginia Tech has to play Clemson. They have to play, looking at their schedule again, actually Clemson is the only team that Virginia Tech plays out of the Atlantic too, as far as the top three teams are concerned anyway. So, their schedules are pretty even. That game against Virginia Tech for Miami is in Miami, so I think that, of course, should help them out in winning that game. So we're going to go with Miami being that team to play against Florida State. Again, that would be a rematch of that rivalry game. Should be interesting. And, Miami, could they be that team that surprises, and maybe they're 10-1, 11-0 coming into, not at that point, but maybe 11-1 coming into the ACC title game possibly. I mean, it's possible. The schedule sets up okay for them. They're tough road trip at Pittsburgh to end the season, but they got Notre Dame at home. Georgia Tech is at home. Really, their toughest road test is going to be Florida State. When it comes down to it. So I've got Miami again. Now, of course, Miami is a team they're working on a new quarterback as well, so that could be an issue early in the season. We'll see how that works out. So a lot of things could shake out in this ACC. It would not surprise me one bit if my predictions are off and we get a totally different outcome. But I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with Florida State, Miami, with a rematch in the ACC title game. I'm going to go Florida State winning that game. And we'll see if that's enough to get them into the college football playoff. Again, this is Kerry Wood. I hope you enjoyed me breaking down the ACC. I hope you enjoy reading about it as well, and I hope you enjoy everything that you see on my site. We're going to have a lot more content. Look out for more previews of the conferences here in college football, and then we're going to get into some NFL. Please be on the lookout for that. I think you're going to enjoy it. Again, Kerry Wood, a.k.a. Mr. Sports and Swag. Sports and Swag Report is out. Until next time.